Packing for a U.S. national park is never just a checklist exercise. It's a quiet negotiation with geography, season, and the long human story of how people have moved through these landscapes, first as indigenous homelands and travel corridors, later as mapped scenery, and eventually as protected public places shaped by the National Park Service since 1916. The same trail can feel like two different worlds depending on whether it's July heat shimmering off slick rock in arches or January wind scouring the rim of the Grand Canyon. What you carry decides whether you experience a park as a living classroom or as an avoidable emergency. To make that decision easier, here are 10 packing items that change meaning between winter and summer. Each one is a small piece of fieldcraft, part outdoor science, part cultural habit, tuned to the realities of national parks. Big distances, limited services, and weather that doesn't care what the forecast promised at the visitor center. Start with the most fundamental item, your clothing system, because in parks, comfort is safety. In winter, the winning strategy is layering. A moisture-wicking base layer keeps sweat from chilling you when you stop moving. An insulating middle layer, fleece, wool, or puffy synthetic, traps warm air. A shell blocks wind and precipitation. This isn't fashion, it's physics. Rangers and mountaineers have relied on the same principle for a century. Control moisture, hold heat, block wind. In summer, the system flips. You're still layering, but for sun and ventilation. Lightweight long sleeves for UV protection, breathable fabrics that dry fast, and a light wind layer for exposed ridges. In places like Big Bend, Saguaro, or Death Valley, covering skin can be cooler than bare arms because it slows dehydration and reduces direct solar load. And in high-elevation parks like Rocky Mountain or Mount Rainier, summer can still deliver sleet on a pass, so the summer layer needs to be more than a t-shirt. Second, bring the right footwear and treat it as terrain equipment rather than clothing. In winter, traction becomes the headline. Many national park trails turn into hard-packed snow, glare ice, or a churned mix of slush and refreeze, conditions that can be more hazardous than fresh powder. Microspikes or similar traction devices are often the difference between a confident walk and a fall that ends a trip. Waterproof boots and gaiters keep melting snow from soaking socks, which is how mild discomfort becomes numb toes. In summer, the priority is breathability, grip on dry rock, and protection from heat. In desert parks, ground temperatures can soar. In canyon country, slick rock demands reliable soles. In wet parks like Olympic or Great Smoky Mountains, you'll want shoes that shed water and dry quickly. Blisters are not trivial in a national park. Distance and limited cell service can turn just a hot spot into a forced retreat. Third is hydration capacity, which changes dramatically by season. Summer parks teach this lesson bluntly. Water is weight, but it's also time and freedom. In many parks, especially in the Southwest, water sources are scarce, seasonal, or unsafe to drink untreated. A hydration bladder, or multiple bottles that total 2 to 4 liters per person for day hiking, is common in hot, exposed areas, and more may be necessary depending on trail length and temperature. Winter, oddly, can trick people into drinking less because cold suppresses thirst. Yet winter air is often drier, and breathing hard at altitude increases water loss. In freezing conditions, hydration systems can fail. Hoses freeze, bottle caps ice shut. The winter solution is simple and old school. Wide-mouth bottles stored upside down so the ice forms at the bottom, plus an insulated sleeve if you'll be out for hours. If you're hiking in Yellowstone or Grand Teton in winter, that one detail can keep water available when you need it most. Fourth, water treatment. And yes, it matters in both seasons. In summer, it's often your primary plan. Filters, purification tablets, or UV purifiers allow you to use streams and lakes where permitted, reducing how much you must carry. In winter, treatment still matters because many water sources remain available under ice or in flowing sections, and dehydration is just as real. But winter introduces a technical constraint. Filters can be ruined if they freeze after use, because expanding ice can damage internal fibers. The winter workaround is to keep the filter warm inside a jacket pocket or sleeping bag after you've used it. This is the kind of detail that sounds fussy until you're miles from a trailhead and your filter stops working. Fifth is sun protection, which surprises people who associate it only with beach weather. Summer sun protection is obvious: broad-spectrum sunscreen, a wide-brim hat, sunglasses, and lip balm. But winter sun can be harsher in a different way. Snow reflects ultraviolet radiation, effectively doubling exposure, and high-elevation parks intensify UV even on cold days. Glacier, Lassen Volcanic, and the high country of Yosemite can deliver sunburn in February as efficiently as July. Sunglasses or goggles aren't just comfort. They prevent snow blindness, a painful condition that can make travel dangerous. If you pack only one seasonal item for both, make it eye protection with real UV coverage. Sixth, navigation tools. Because national parks are not theme parks, even when they have shuttle systems and paved overlooks. In summer, trails are generally more visible, but crowds can create a false sense of security. A paper map and a downloaded offline map on your phone cover most day hikes, and a small power bank keeps your phone alive for photos, navigation, and emergencies. In winter, navigation becomes more serious because trails may be buried, signs obscured, and landmarks altered by snow. A compass paired with a paper map is still one of the most reliable systems ever invented, unaffected by dead batteries or cold. If you're traveling in parks with complex winter terrain, like the canyons of Zion when snow dusts the plateau above, or the broad forests of Voyageurs, basic navigation skill and tools are a quiet form of respect for the landscape. Seventh, lighting, which is easy to underestimate until a short winter day proves the point. A headlamp is a year-round essential, but winter gives it urgency. Darkness arrives early, and cold reduces battery performance. Lithium batteries handle cold better than alkaline, and carrying a spare set is wise. In summer, the headlamp is your insurance policy. For late returns, for stargazing walks in parks famous for dark skies, and for the simple reality that sunset on a long trail can sneak up. National parks have become central to modern dark sky conservation, with places like Bryce Canyon and Big Bend celebrated for night skies that resemble the pre-electric world. If you plan to experience that, you'll want hands-free light that doesn't ruin your night vision. Use a low setting when possible. Eighth, food. And the way you pack it shifts with temperature and wildlife. In winter, your body burns more calories to stay warm, and cold can dull appetite even as energy needs rise. Pack calorie-dense foods that won't freeze into tooth-breaking bricks. Nuts, cheese, energy bars that stay chewable, and a thermos with something warm. In summer, heat changes the problem. Chocolate melts, some foods spoil, and salty snacks become more important as you sweat. In bear country, common across many mountain and forest parks, food storage is not optional. Many parks require bear-resistant canisters in backcountry areas, and even on day hikes, food should be packed in a way that reduces scent and temptation. The history here is sobering. For decades, bears in parks were habituated by human food, leading to dangerous encounters and the killing of problem animals. Modern food rules are as much about wildlife ethics as they are about visitor safety. Ninth, emergency essentials tailored to season. The classic 10 Essentials concept, popularized in the 20th century as outdoor recreation expanded, still holds up. First aid, fire, shelter, extra food, extra water, navigation, light, and signaling. In winter, add an emergency bivvy or space blanket that actually blocks wind, plus hand warmers if you're prone to cold injury. Hypothermia can occur above freezing when wind and wet clothing combine, and parks with maritime climates, like Olympic, are famous for cold rain that saps heat fast. In summer, emergency planning often centers on heat illness. Pack electrolytes, a small shade item like an ultralight tarp or even a large bandana, and know the early signs of heat exhaustion. In both seasons, a whistle is a simple, powerful tool. Sound carries farther than shouting, and it costs almost nothing in weight. 10th, season-specific gear that turns a good trip into a great one. In winter, that might be trekking poles with snow baskets for stability, waterproof gloves, and a warm hat that covers ears. Small items with outsized impact. In some parks and conditions, snowshoes are essential to prevent post-holing and to protect fragile snowpack trails used by others. In summer, the equivalent category includes insect protection, especially in wetland and boreal parks where mosquitoes and ticks are part of the ecosystem's reality. A head net can be sanity-saving in places like Voyageurs, Isle Royale, or the lake country of Alaska's parks during peak bug season. Summer also invites a different kind of gear, a lightweight rain jacket for monsoon storms in the southwest, or a dry bag for boat-based parks and coastal hikes. Threaded through all 10 items is one practical travel truth about national parks. Conditions can change faster than services can respond. Many parks are intentionally lightly developed, a philosophy rooted in early debates over what parks should be: scenic preserves, recreational playgrounds, or living ecosystems with minimal human imprint. That means fewer stores, fewer staffed facilities, and long distances between help. Packing well is not over-preparation. It's the price of admission to places that still operate on nature's schedule. And here's the rewarding part. The right packing list doesn't just prevent problems. It expands what you can notice. In summer, carrying enough water lets you linger at a petroglyph panel without rushing back in the heat. And sun protection makes it possible to study the color bands of a canyon wall without squinting away the view. In winter, traction devices and warm layers let you move quietly through a landscape where sound travels differently, where animal tracks write stories across fresh snow, and where familiar overlooks become spare, sculptural studies in weather and light. National parks are often introduced as America's best idea, but they're also a practical idea. Public lands that ask you to meet them halfway. Pack for the season, pack for the place, and you'll arrive not as a consumer of scenery, but as a capable visitor, ready to learn, ready to wander, and ready to leave the park as intact as you found it.